Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. Wow, what a book. I have to say I wrestled with it a little bit, reading it and then listening to it on Audible and then reading it again, and finally actually kind of condensing it into just under 4,000 words, which hasn't made it any easier to make this video. So speaking to my lovely mentor, my mentor gave me incredible advice, which was just give 5 points about Waking the Tiger that someone who hasn't read it would get from it. And I thought, well, there's like so many more, but yeah, that's such a great idea. So firstly, this is a book about trauma and how trauma is stored within the cells of our body as undischarged energy when we've had a traumatic experience. And he explains it initially about with animals, and how the animals, if an animal's being caught, that say an impala and a cheetah, which is an example that Dr. Levine uses, the impala will just drop, it immobilizes, which is one of the things that happens when there's a trauma, and it'll stay like that without moving, hoping that the cheetah will think it's dead, in which case maybe leave it thinking there's something wrong, or move away and just be focused on something else. It also takes the pain out of the death process if the animal does get eaten. And so basically sometimes it gives the chance of this animal to then get up and flee again, which happens. And then they just get on with what they're doing. The amazing thing about animals that we are unable to do is just to let go of that. And we have a more complicated brain that means that we have thoughts behind the actions of what's happened. So when an animal senses danger, it'll be startled, it'll check out what's going on, and then it'll return to what it was doing, eating or sleeping. And it forgets about it, doesn't think about it at all. Whereas we, create a big story and a lot of thoughts about it. And in a way, we don't really discharge the trauma that's gone on. So what is incredible also is the way that the animals discharge this trauma, that they may look up startled, and then there'll be a shaking process. And you quite often see with any of these wildlife documentaries with the wild antelope and things in Serengeti or wherever, or Impala, that they start to twitch and shake afterwards, and then this runs through the whole body, and it's almost like the whole body releases this energy that needs discharging, because when the trauma happens, it's a bit like this. He likens it to having the accelerator push down and the brake at the same time. The body's immobilized, but also it's got all this energy inside. So this is the way the animal releases it. So what we have grown up with in a community is, if something happens to us and we cry, we tell our children or each other, it's okay, don't worry, stop crying, you'll be all right, let it go, move on. And actually what we really need to say is, cry. How do you feel? What's going on for you? Let it out, just let it happen. And then afterwards, the second step of this is also being able to, the playful phase 2 step of being able to talk about the incident and to be able to share that, to also discharge the energy of the trauma of the accident, of the issue, whatever's happened at the time. So, I mean, those things are hugely, hugely powerful. The fact that the trauma is held within the cells of the body, the fact that we are born and this trauma can happen in the first 7 years of our lives quite often, is pretty amazing. That it can happen at birth, just being born into bright lights and being shaken. And there's some beautiful work that he is doing in Norway, where they are getting mothers and babies from different communities and backgrounds together and doing lots of rhythmical singing and dancing and using some drumming and rattles and sounds to really make a beautiful, calming environment that the parents, the mothers or the primary care holders are relaxing from, so that we're not passing this trauma and this feeling of trauma down to our children. And so they do all this together, and then the babies are carried in a blanket, which I guess is kind of likened to being back in the womb, where you're suspended in something warm and wrapped up. But apparently they're finding that the results of this are incredibly powerful, and it's reducing the amount of trauma and allowing the transferring of the trauma from a mother to a child to be broken, to be a pattern breaker in this, what would otherwise be passing down the same thing over and over again. The other incredible thing in this book was that these traumas play out in our lives, and the acting out or bad behavior by somebody perhaps is not about, it's whether it's in a relationship, for example, it's not about the other person, it's about this sort of, again, residual trauma and energy in the body that needs to be released, and it's quite often stored as anger. And so that was something that I found really very interesting. It's an incredible way of looking at trauma and how in society now, we can actually change what's going on. And I had a conversation with a mother and daughter the other day about this, because a mother and her little baby, because they were talking about she's pregnant again and she's going to have another baby, and she's like, I don't know really what I'm meant to do now, because some people say pick them up when they're crying, some people don't. And I was like, can I share something with you? Can I share? Because I would love to know this again, that we should really pick up a baby and not let it cry, and not push it away to a naughty step or quiet time, but actually embrace and hold and love and nurture and make it feel safe. And if we could do that for all our children going forward, how we would just change society. It would be an incredible change, and we would have generations of calm, happy, loving people who are whole and not being led by or living from a place of fear, from the hypervigilance and the hyperarousal that's occurred in the trauma that they're holding onto. So what a beautiful book. I loved it. It was amazing. I don't think I've done it justice, but it was very powerful. Thank you. Thanks for listening.